The space station floated in the darkness between three star systems. It was called Velar 9, and it was the largest trading post in this part of the galaxy. Ships came and went every hour. Species from dozens of worlds walked through its metal corridors, conducting business, making deals, and sometimes making enemies. Stood near the observation window, watching a cargo ship dock at the lower platform. She was 26 years old, with black hair tied back in a simple knot and eyes that seemed to notice everything. She wore the gray uniform of the Korean Peninsula Coalition's diplomatic corps. To anyone watching, she looked like what she was supposed to be: a junior, quiet, unimportant, easy to ignore. That was exactly how she wanted it. Behind her, the main hall buzzed with activity. The Galactic Trade Summit had brought together 12 different species, all competing for mining rights, trade routes, and political influence. The humans were newcomers to this game. They had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago, and most species still viewed them as children playing at the adults' table. Walked up beside her. He was 32, tall for a human, with a friendly face that made negotiations easier. He was good at his job. He was also completely unaware of what really was. "The delegation just arrived," he said, keeping his voice low. "They're not happy." Turned from the window. "They're never happy." This was true. There were a warrior species from the outer reach, a cluster of harsh planets where only the strong survived. They stood 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales, with claws that could tear through metal. They had conquered 6 systems before joining the Galactic Council, and they still believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. To them, humans were insects. "Commander is leading their team," continued. "He's got a reputation, aggressive, territorial. He's killed challengers in formal duels before." Nodded slowly. She had read the files. She had memorized every detail about the delegation weeks before arriving at the station. She knew how they fought, how they thought, and what made them dangerous. She also knew they were predictable. "We should stay out of their way," said. "Ambassador wants the negotiations to go smoothly. No incidents." "Of course," replied. They walked together toward the main conference hall. The corridors of Velar 9 were wide enough for the largest species to pass through comfortably. The walls were lined with screens displaying trade information, security notices, and advertisements for various businesses on the station. Small drones floated overhead, scanning everyone who passed. The air smelled strange, a mixture of recycled oxygen and unfamiliar chemicals from dozens of different atmospheres. Had grown used to it during her first day on the station, but she still noticed it. She noticed everything. The conference hall was enormous. Curved tables had been arranged in a circle, with each delegation given their own section. Holographic displays floated above the center of the room, showing maps of disputed territories, resource projections, and legal documents. Translators worked silently in the background, converting every language into something everyone could understand. Ambassador was already seated at the human table. She was 53 years old, with gray hair and a face that had seen too many difficult negotiations. She had spent her entire career trying to earn humanity a place in the galactic community. It had cost her a marriage, her health, and most of her faith in other species. But she kept trying. She said as they approached, "Sit down, they are about to make their opening statement." They took their seats just as Commander entered the hall. He was massive, even for a. His scales were darker than the others from countless battles. He walked like he owned every room he entered, and his yellow eyes swept across the gathered delegations with open contempt. When his gaze reached the human section, he paused. His lip curled upward, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Soft ones," he growled, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They send children to negotiate with warriors." A few of the other delegations shifted uncomfortably. They were known for their insults, but openly mocking another species at a diplomatic summit was unusual even for them. Ambassador's expression didn't change. "We're here to discuss the Tau sector mining rights, Commander. I suggest we focus on that." Laughed, it was a harsh, ugly sound. Mining rights, resources, wealth. These things belong to those strong enough to take them. What can humans take? You have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. You are prey animals pretending to be predators. His hands tightened under the table, remained perfectly still. The negotiations continued for hours, but the tone had been set. They refused every compromise, rejected every proposal, and responded to every human suggestion with mockery. By the end of the first day, nothing had been accomplished. As the delegations filed out of the conference hall, noticed one of them watching her. He was younger than but just as large. A thick scar ran down the left side of his face, crossing over his eye. His name was, and according to the files, he was second in command. He had killed 11 beings in personal combat. Met his gaze calmly. She didn't look away, didn't show fear, didn't react at all. After a long moment's eyes narrowed. He had noticed her. That night sat alone in her quarters, reviewing data on a small tablet. The room was simple, just a bed, a desk, and a small window looking out at the stars. She didn't need comfort. She had been trained to function without it. Project had taken her when she was 14. For 12 years, they had shaped her into something that didn't officially exist: nerve acceleration, pain resistance, combat reflexes that operated faster than conscious thought. She could kill with her bare hands, and they had no idea. Nobody did. Tomorrow, she knew, would try something. She had seen it in his eyes. They couldn't stand being looked at by someone they considered inferior. He would try to establish dominance, to remind her of her place. Set down her tablet and looked out at the stars. She was ready. The second day of negotiations was worse than the first. Commander arrived late, forcing every other delegation to wait. When he finally entered, he made no apology. He simply took his seat and began listing demands that no reasonable species would accept. Watched from her position at the human table. She had barely slept, but she didn't feel tired. Her body had been trained to function on minimal rest. 4 hours was enough. 2 hours was manageable. She had once gone 5 days without sleep during a training exercise and still completed her mission. The mission right now was simple: observe, report, and avoid incidents. Ambassador had made that very clear. The Korean Peninsula Coalition couldn't afford a diplomatic disaster. Humanity was still too new, too fragile in the galactic community. One wrong move could set them back decades. But knew that sometimes wrong moves found you, whether you wanted them or not. The morning session ended with no progress. They demanded full control of the Tau sector. The other species objected. Arguments filled the conference hall until the moderator called for a break. Stood and stretched her shoulders. Hours of sitting had made her muscles stiff, and she needed to move. She told she was going to get something to eat and left the conference hall through a side corridor. The corridor was quieter than the main passages. It connected the conference area to a small food court where delegates could get meals during breaks. The walls here were plain gray metal, lit by strips of soft white light. Security drones floated near the ceiling, their scanners blinking green as passed. She was halfway to the food court when she heard heavy footsteps behind her. She didn't turn around. She already knew who it was. His voice echoed off the metal walls. "Human female, stop." Stopped. She turned slowly, keeping her hands visible at her sides. Stood 10 meters away, his face twisted into something between a smile and a snarl. 2 others flanked him, younger warriors eager to prove themselves. "You looked at me yesterday," said. He took a step closer. "You did not lower your eyes. You did not show proper respect." Kept her voice calm. "I wasn't aware that looking at someone was disrespectful. Among my people, it is a challenge." Another step. "Prey does not meet the eyes of a predator. When it does, it must be reminded of its place." The two younger spread out, blocking the corridor behind. She noted their positions without looking directly at them. One was slightly to her left, the other to her right. Both were tense, excited. They wanted to see what would do. His voice crackled in her earpiece. He had noticed she was taking too long. Everything okay? She didn't respond. Any movement toward her comm device might be seen as aggression. Was close now, close enough that she could smell him. Had a distinctive scent, like copper and smoke. His yellow eyes looked down at her with contempt. "On my world," he said, "we have a tradition. When a weaker creature forgets its place, we correct it. A simple touch." He raised his clawed hand. "A reminder of who holds the power." Understood. This was a dominance ritual. The stronger warrior would grab the weaker one's shoulder and squeeze until they submitted. It was meant to cause pain, to humiliate, to establish hierarchy. For a human, those claws could easily pierce skin and muscle. "I'm asking you not to do that," she said quietly. Laughed, the sound bounced off the walls. "Asking, you ask. Little creature, you do not get to ask, you get to accept." His hand shot toward her shoulder. Shifted her weight. It was a small movement, barely visible, but it changed everything. Her shoulder was no longer where his hand expected it to be. His claws closed on empty air. Froze, his eyes went wide with confusion. No soft skin had ever dodged him. It should have been impossible. The two younger exchanged uncertain glances. "I'm asking you again," said. Her voice hadn't changed. Still calm, still quiet. "Please don't do that." Something dark passed over his face. Confusion turned to rage. He had been embarrassed in front of his subordinates. For a warrior, there was no greater insult. He swung again. This time it wasn't a dominance grab. It was a strike, aimed at her face, meant to hurt her, to punish her for making him look foolish. Didn't dodge this time. She caught his wrist. The impact made a sharp sound that echoed through the corridor. His arm stopped in midair, trembling against her grip. Her fingers wrapped around his wrist like bands of iron. She could feel his pulse hammering beneath his scales. For a long moment, nobody moved. The security drones overhead began to react. Their lights shifted from green to yellow. One of them descended lower, its scanner sweeping across the scene. Then the scanner on the wall behind activated. It made a soft beeping sound, analyzing the situation. The light turned red. Stared at her hand around his wrist. He tried to pull away, but she didn't let go. He was stronger than her, much stronger, but strength wasn't everything. She knew exactly where to grip, exactly how much pressure to apply. His wrist couldn't move without breaking. "What are you?" he whispered. Looked up at him. Her eyes were steady, empty of fear, empty of anger. They were the eyes of someone who had seen things that couldn't imagine. "I'm a diplomatic," she said, "and I warned you." She released his wrist. Stumbled backward, nearly falling. He cradled his arm against his chest, staring at her like she had transformed into something monstrous. The two younger backed away, their earlier excitement replaced by something closer to fear. Above them, the security scanner remained locked on red. Footsteps approached from the direction of the food court, appeared around the corner, his face tight with concern. Behind him, two station security officers followed, their hands on their weapons. "What happened?" demanded. Turned to face him, her expression was perfectly neutral. "A misunderstanding. It's resolved now." Said nothing. He gathered his subordinates with a sharp gesture and retreated down the corridor. But before he disappeared around the corner, he looked back at her one final time. His eyes held a promise. This wasn't over. The security officers took statements and reviewed the drone footage. The official report would say that a minor altercation had occurred and been de-escalated. No injuries, no formal complaints. But knew better. The scanner had locked red. That information would spread, questions would be asked. They would want answers, they would want revenge. And somewhere in the station's database, Her biometric data was now flagged as something impossible, something dangerous. She walked back to the conference hall answering his questions with half-truths and careful omissions. He believed her. He had no reason not to. But as she took her seat at the human table, she felt Ambassador's eyes on her. The older woman's expression was unreadable, but there was something new in her gaze. Recognition. Knew about project. She had too. The ambassador leaned closer and spoke in a voice too low for anyone else to hear. "Whatever happens next," she said, "try not to kill anyone." Not at once. She made no promises. The news traveled fast. Within 2 hours of the corridor incident, every delegation on Velar 9 had heard some version of the story. A human female had stopped a warrior's strike with her bare hand. The security scanner had locked red. Nobody knew what it meant, but everyone was talking about it. Sat in a small meeting room with Ambassador and the room was soundproofed and swept for listening devices. Whatever they discussed here would stay between them. "The scanner data is being reviewed by station security," said. She stood by the window, her arms crossed. "They've never seen a human trigger a red lock before. They're confused." "What does red even mean?" asked. He was still processing what he had seen on the security footage. The woman he had worked beside for 6 months had done something impossible. Turn to face them. The on Velar 9 are designed to assess threat levels in real time. Green means civilian, yellow means trained, red means apex predator. His face went pale. Apex predator, that's reserved for species like the things that evolved to hunt and kill. Yes, but is human. We're not. We're not apex anything. Our species survived by using tools and working together, not by being physically dangerous. Said nothing. She looked at. Understood. The time for secrets was ending. Deserved to know at least part of the truth. "I'm not a normal diplomatic," she said quietly. "I never was." Stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means that 12 years ago, the Korean Peninsula Coalition started a program. They called it Project, after the ancient warrior order. The goal was to create human operatives who could match any species in the galaxy, not through weapons or technology, but through their own bodies." The room was silent. Outside, ships continued to dock and depart from the station. Life went on, but in this small room, everything was changing. "They selected candidates when we were young," continued, "teenagers with specific genetic markers. Then they trained us. Nerve acceleration therapy, pain tolerance conditioning, reflex mapping that operates below conscious thought. By the time we finished, we were something new, something that didn't fit into the old categories." His hands were shaking. "That's why the scanner locked red. It wasn't reading your species. It was reading what you could do." "Yes. How many of you are there?" Paused. This information was classified at the highest levels. Even she didn't know the full answer. "Enough. We're placed in sensitive positions throughout human space. Embassies, trade missions, military installations. Most of us never have to reveal what we are." "But now the no said. Or at least they know something is wrong. We'll tell Commander, we'll demand answers." As if on cue, a chime sounded at the door. Opened it to find a station security officer standing outside. "Ambassador," the officer said, "Commander has filed a formal complaint. He's requesting a meeting with station administration. He says a human operative assaulted his warrior." His expression didn't change. "We'll be there." The meeting took place in the station administrator's office. It was a large room with curved walls and a massive viewport showing the stars outside. The administrator was a species known for their neutrality and attention to detail. Her name was Supervisor, and she had managed Velar 9 for 30 years without a single major incident. She did not look happy. Commander stood on one side of the room, flanked by 2 other officers. His wrist was wrapped in a medical bandage. he hadn't looked at since she entered. "This is an outrage," growled. "Your human attacked my warrior without provocation. She should be arrested and removed from this station." Remained calm. "The security footage shows your warrior approaching Mai and attempting to strike her. She defended herself. That's not assault. That's self-defense." She caught his arm, snapped. "No human can do that. Your species is weak, fragile. This female is something else. Something you have hidden from the galactic community." Supervisor raised a hand for silence. "The scanner data is troubling. In all my years on this station, I have never seen a human trigger a red lock. I would like an explanation." Everyone looked at. She stood straight, her hands clasped behind her back. She had been trained for moments like this. She knew exactly what to say. "Supervisor, they believe that physical strength is the only measure of a species. They look at humans and see soft skin, brittle bones, and no natural weapons. They assume we are weak because we don't look dangerous." She paused, letting her words settle. "But humans didn't survive by being the strongest. We survived by being the most adaptable. We learned to fight things bigger than us, faster than us, deadlier than us. We learned to push our bodies beyond their natural limits. What you saw on that scanner wasn't a mistake. It was the result of thousands of years of evolution and 12 years of training. I am what humanity can become when we choose to." The room was silent. Scales had darkened with rage, but he didn't speak, stared at the floor. The other shifted uncomfortably. Supervisor studied for a long moment. "You're saying that humans have been hiding their true capabilities." "Not hiding," answered. "Reserving. We prefer diplomacy to violence. We prefer trade to conquest. But if pushed, we can push back. That's all Mai demonstrated today." Stepped forward, then let her demonstrate again, formally, in a challenge. The word hung in the air like a blade. Challenges were an ancient tradition. When honor was questioned, warriors could settle the matter through combat. It was legal under galactic law, though rarely used. The winner gained honor. The loser lost everything. "You want to fight her," said, disbelief in his voice. "She's half your size." "Not me," said. His yellow eyes locked onto me, commander to operative. "If she wins, they will acknowledge humanity's strength. If she loses, your delegation leaves this summit in disgrace." Supervisor looked troubled. "A formal challenge is a serious matter. There are rules, protocols." "I know the protocols," said. "I have followed them before. I will follow them now." He turned to, "What do you say, Ambassador? Does your hidden warrior have the courage to face me?" Didn't answer immediately. She looked at, a question in her eyes. Gave a small nod. "She does," said. "But understand this, Commander. You're asking for something you may regret." Laughed. It was the same harsh, ugly sound he had made in the conference hall. "I have killed 30 challengers across the galaxy, Ambassador. I have never regretted any of them." He turned and walked toward the door, his officers following. At the threshold, he paused and looked back. "Tomorrow," he said, "the challenge floor, I'll be waiting." Then he was gone. Let out a breath he had been holding. This is insane. He's 7 feet tall, he has claws, he has killed 30 beings in combat. Looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning through space, unaware of what was about to happen on this station. "He's never fought a human," she said quietly. "Not really." She turned from the window and headed for the door. "I need to prepare." The challenge floor was located in the lower section of Velar 9, in an arena that had been built centuries ago for exactly this purpose. The walls were reinforced metal from countless battles. The floor was covered in a special material that absorbed blood and could be cleaned between matches. Observation platforms surrounded the arena on all sides, providing perfect views of whatever happened below. By the time arrived, the platforms were already filling up. Word of the challenge had spread through the entire station. Delegations from all 12 species had come to watch. Some were curious, Some were excited. A few looked worried. The humans sat together in a section near the main entrance. Ambassador occupied the front row, her face carved from stone, sat beside her, unable to hide his fear. Behind them, the other members of the human delegation whispered among themselves. Stood in a preparation room beneath the arena. The room was small, with bare walls and a single bench. A mirror hung on one wall, cracked from age. She looked at her reflection and saw what everyone else would see. A small human woman, barely 5'4", with no visible weapons and no armor. She didn't need either. The door opened and entered. The ambassador carried a small case in her hands. She set it on the bench and opened it. Inside was a simple black uniform. No logos, no insignia, nothing to identify its origin. It was made from a material that looked like cloth but was actually a specialized fabric developed by Project. It wouldn't stop a blade, but it would move with her body, never restricting, never slowing her down. "I had this brought from the embassy ship," said. "I thought you might want it." Touched the fabric. It was cool and smooth beneath her fingers. She hadn't worn this uniform since her final training exercise 3 years ago. Wearing it now felt like coming home. "Thank you." Watched as changed. When she was done, the ambassador spoke again. "I've seen the recordings from Project. I know what you can do, but isn't. He's faster, stronger, and more experienced. He's killed species that were supposed to be unkillable." "I know. And you're still going through with this." Turned to face her. "If I don't, they will never respect humanity. They'll keep pushing, keep testing, keep treating us like prey. This is the only language they understand. I have to speak it." Was silent for a moment, then she nodded. "Try not to kill him. The paperwork would be a nightmare." Despite everything, almost smiled. A horn sounded, echoing through the arena. It was time. Walked up the ramp and onto the challenge floor. The light was bright here, coming from panels in the ceiling that illuminated every corner. There were no shadows, no places to hide. Everything that happened would be seen by everyone. The observation platforms erupted in noise as she appeared. Species that had never paid attention to humans before were now watching with intense focus. The mounted around the arena activated, their lights green as they began recording. Commander entered from the opposite side. He was even larger than he had seemed in the conference room. His scales gleamed under the lights, dark green and thick as armor. He wore traditional combat garments, loose pants that allowed freedom of movement and nothing else. His chest was bare, revealing muscles that looked like they had been carved from stone. Scars covered his body, each one a record of a battle survived. In his hand he carried a ceremonial blade. It was curved, single-edged, and long enough to reach from 3 meters away. The blade was meant for slashing, not stabbing. It was designed to cause maximum pain while keeping the victim alive long enough to acknowledge defeat. Walked to the center of the arena and stopped. His yellow eyes found and stayed there. "You came," he said. "I expected you to run." Walked toward him. She stopped 5 meters away, close enough to talk, far enough to react. "I don't run." "No weapons, no armor. You face me with nothing but your soft body." "Yes." Tilted his head, studying her like she was something strange and unfamiliar. "You either have courage or madness, little human. Perhaps both." "Perhaps." The arena fell silent. Supervisor stood on a raised platform above the floor. She raised her hand. "This is a formal challenge under galactic law. Commander of the Dominion has challenged of the Korean Peninsula Coalition. The challenge will continue until one combatant submits, is rendered unable to continue, or dies. Are both parties prepared?" Raised his blade. "I am prepared." Settled into a stance that looked relaxed but wasn't. Every muscle in her body was ready. Every nerve was firing. "I am prepared." His hand dropped. "Begin." Moved. He was fast, faster than something his size should be. The blade swept through the air in a horizontal arc aimed at its chest. If it connected, it would cut her in half. Stepped backward. The blade passed through the space where she had been standing, missing by centimeters. Didn't pause. He followed with a downward strike, then an upward slash, then a spinning attack that would have taken her head off. Each strike was precise, controlled, and deadly. Avoided them all. She moved like water flowing around stones. Her feet barely seemed to touch the ground. She didn't block, didn't parry, didn't fight back. She simply wasn't where the blade was. The observation platforms had gone completely silent. The species watching couldn't understand what they were seeing. A human, unarmed, was dancing around one of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. Satax grew wilder, more frustrated. He had never missed so many times in a single fight. His blade cut nothing but air. His claws grabbed nothing but empty space. "Stand still," he roared. "Face me." Didn't respond. She continued to move, continued to dodge, continued to study him. She was learning. Every species had patterns. Every fighter had habits. The way they shifted their weight before attacking. The way they exhaled before striking. The tiny movements that revealed their next action before it happened. His pattern was becoming clear. He always dropped his shoulder before a horizontal slash. He always stepped with his left foot before a lunge. He always blinked before changing direction. 37 seconds into the fight, knew exactly how to defeat him. But she waited. She wanted to see. She wanted every species in the arena to understand. Humans weren't weak. They weren't prey. They were something the galaxy had never encountered before. Survivors. Swung again, pouring all his rage into a single devastating strike. The blade cut through the air towards neck. She didn't dodge. Instead, she stepped forward, inside the arc of the blade, so close to that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Her hands came up in a blur of motion. She caught the flat of the blade between her palms. The impact echoed through the arena like a thunderclap. The blade stopped dead, trembling between her hands. Blood seeped from her palms where the edge had cut her, but she didn't let go. Stared at her in disbelief. His muscles strained, trying to force the blade forward, but it wouldn't move. "How?" he whispered. Looked up at him. Her eyes were calm, empty of fear, empty of anger. "You never learn to fight something that refuses to be afraid," she said. Above them, every scanner in the arena locked red. The arena had become completely still. Every being in the observation platforms was frozen, staring at the scene below. A human woman, blood dripping from her hands, held a commander's blade motionless between her palms. Tried to pull the blade back, it didn't move. He tried to push it forward, it didn't move. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never experienced before. Something cold, creeping up from his stomach to his chest. Fear. "Let go," he growled, but his voice had lost its power. Looked at the blade between her hands. The edge had cut deep into her palms, and blood ran down her wrists, dripping onto the arena floor. The pain was there, present and real, but it was distant, like something happening to someone else. Her training had taught her to compartmentalize, to set pain aside until it was useful. Right now, it wasn't useful. She tightened her grip and twisted. The ceremonial blade, forged from metals mined in the outer reach and hardened by processes that had taken centuries to perfect, snapped in half. The sound was sharp and sudden, like a bone breaking. The top half of the blade clattered to the floor. The bottom half remained in his hand, useless. Stumbled backward. He stared at the broken weapon, then at the broken weapon again. His mind couldn't process what had just happened. "That blade has been in my family for 12 generations," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "It has killed over 100 warriors. It won't kill anymore." Stepped forward, stepped back. The greatest warrior of the Dominion was retreating from a human woman half his size. The observation platforms began to stir. Whispers spread through the crowd. Species that had dismissed humanity as insignificant were now looking at them with new eyes. His retreat stopped. His back was against the arena wall. He had nowhere else to go. "Finish it," he said. His voice was hollow. "You have defeated me. Take your victory." Stopped, she stood 2 meters away from him, close enough to reach him if she wanted. Her bloody hands hung at her sides. "I'm not going to kill you." Looked confused. That is how challenges end. The loser dies or submits completely. Those are the only options. Those are the options. I'm human. We have different ones. She turned to face the observation platforms. Her voice rose, carrying to every corner of the arena. "You look at us and see weakness, soft skin, brittle bones, no claws, no fangs, no armor. You think we are prey because we don't look like predators." She paused, letting her words settle. "But you don't understand what we are. Humans didn't evolve on a kind world. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. Predators hunted us. Diseases struck us down. The weather, the terrain, even the water tried to destroy us. And we survived. Not because we were the strongest, but because we refused to stop." Blood continued to drip from her hands. She made no move to stop it. "We learned to fight things bigger than us. We learned to endure pain that should have killed us. We learned to adapt, to change, to become whatever we needed to become. That's what I am. That's what all of us can be. Not the strongest species in the galaxy. Not the fastest or the deadliest. Just the ones who never give up." The arena was silent. Hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds listened to a single human speak. "Commander challenged me because he thought humans were weak. He was wrong. But I'm not going to kill him for making a mistake. That's not who we are. We came to this station to negotiate, to trade, to build connections with other species. We didn't come to prove that we can destroy. We came to prove that we can work with you, alongside you, as equals." She turned back too. The commander was still pressed against the wall, his broken blade in his hand. "You wanted to know what humans are. Now you know. We're the species that catches your blade with our bare hands and then offers you peace." She extended her bloody hand toward him. Stared at her hand for a long moment. Every eye in the arena was on him. His warriors, his people, beings from a dozen other species, all waited to see what he would do. Then slowly, he reached out and took her hand. The arena erupted. Species that had been enemies for centuries were suddenly talking to each other. Diplomats who had ignored the human delegation were now pushing toward them. The entire atmosphere of the station had changed in a single moment. On the human platform, Ambassador allowed herself a small smile. Looked like he might faint. The other members of the delegation were cheering. Supervisor raised her hand for silence. The noise gradually faded. "The challenge is concluded," she announced. "Of the Korean Peninsula Coalition is the victor. By the terms of the challenge, the Dominion acknowledges humanity's strength." She paused, looking down at the two figures on the arena floor. This is the first time in station history that a challenge has ended with both parties standing. It is also the first time a human has triggered a red lock on our. I suspect this will not be the last time humanity surprises us. Released hand. He stood straight, his warrior's pride slowly returning. "You could have killed me," he said. "Why didn't you?" Looked at him. "Because dead warriors can't learn, living ones can change." Was silent for a moment, then he nodded slowly. "My people have been warriors for 10,000 years. We have never respected any species that couldn't fight, but we have also never respected any species that couldn't show mercy. You have shown both." He raised his voice so the entire arena could hear. "The Dominion will remember this day. We will remember the human who caught our blade and offered peace. From this moment, humanity is no longer prey in our eyes. You are something else." "What are we?" asked. Looked at her with something that might have been respect. "You are survivors like us." 3 months later, returned to Earth. The Tau sector mining rights had been divided fairly between all parties. They had agreed to every human proposal. Other species had begun seeking out human diplomats, curious about the small beings who had surprised everyone. Nobody outside a handful of people knew what had really happened. The official reports described a diplomatic breakthrough. They didn't mention project. They didn't mention the challenge. They didn't mention the blood or the broken blade or the scanners locking red. Preferred it that way. She stood on her apartment balcony watching the rain fall over the city. The sounds of traffic drifted up from below. Lights blinked in windows across the district. Ordinary life continued, unchanged by what had happened millions of kilometers away. Her hands had healed. The scars were barely visible, thin white lines across her palms, a reminder of what she had done, what she could do again if necessary. Her tablet chimed, a message from Ambassador. "New assignment coming. Another species wants to test us. Are you ready?" Looked at the message for a long moment. Then she typed her response. "Always." She set down the tablet and turned back to the rain. Somewhere out there, among the stars she couldn't see through the clouds, other species were learning a new truth about humanity. They were soft, they were fragile, they bled and bruised and broke. But they never stopped. And that made them the most dangerous species of all.